washes whiter than snow. Faithful love calms each fear, reaches down, dries each tear, holds my hand when I can't stand on my own. Faithful love, from above, came to earth to show the Father's love. And I'll never be the same, for I've seen faithful love face to face, and Jesus is his name. Faithful love is a friend just when hope seems to end. Welcome face, sweet embrace, tender touch filled with grace. Faithful love, endless power, living flame, Spirit's fire, burning bright in the night, guiding my way. Faithful love, from above, came to earth to show the Father's love. And I'll never be the same, for I've seen faithful love face to face, and Jesus is his name. Wonderful, so wonderful is your unfailing love. Your cross has spoken mercy over me, over me. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no heart could fully know how glorious, how beautiful you are. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. Powerful, so powerful, your glory fills the skies, your mighty works displayed for all to see, all to see. The beauty of your majesty awakes my heart to sing. How marvelous, how wonderful you are. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. You opened my eyes to your wonders anew. You captured my heart with this love, 'cause nothing on earth is as beautiful as you. You opened my eyes to your wonders anew. You captured my heart with this love, 'cause nothing on earth is as beautiful as you. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my
Welcome to our midweek ladies class. We have been working through the book Bind Us Together by Derrida McDaniel, and we have been enjoying this book. This has been such a good book to study together as sisters in Christ. So I wanted to make an announcement. Of course, this next Thursday is Thanksgiving, so no class next week and no online either. Some weeks I have in the past gone ahead and pre-recorded before, that way it could be out there and people could watch, but I'm not going to do that next week. So if you are tuning in online, there just won't be anything to see next week, but we'll be right back to it the week after that. And I think that's December 2nd, maybe, something like that is the next Thursday. So we are going to start off with prayer. If everyone will bow their heads. Father God, we come before you this morning. We are so thankful for this day. We are thankful for Novembers and for the change that's in the air. November is such a special month, kind of making that switch from autumn into winter. And we are so thankful for this time of gratitude that people are thinking about what they're thankful for and thinking about being thankful for family and friends and for the church and for all the things that people can be thankful for. So we're thankful that people are thankful. We ask that you be with us as we have this class this morning. We are thankful for our elders that see that a ladies' class is a good idea for us to do together, and we're thankful for them as they shepherd the flock here. We're thankful for this congregation that meets here at Collinsville. We are thankful for these sisters in Christ and for this book about how to be even closer. And we are thankful for your Son who died on the cross for our sins. In Jesus' name, amen. So we are right here in the beginning of chapter 5. We finished chapter 4 last week, and now we have made it to chapter 5. This is the first chapter where there are real assignments and real things to do. So maybe, and it's kind of nice because where we're not meeting next week, you'll have 2 whole weeks to kind of pick one of these things and try to get it done. And we'll talk about what the things are in a minute. But that'll be kind of nice for the very first assignment week ever to have like a little bit of extra time in there to do it. And it'll be like that as we go because, of course, we'll have a break at Christmas time too. And so there will be just different things coming up in the chapters, and we'll have a way to be able to have more weeks to do them than just one. And that's nice because some of these things might take a little bit of motivating yourself to want to try to do them. And so it'll be good to have a little extra time. So this chapter, chapter 5, is called Open Your Heart. And I really, really like these introductions to the chapters that she does about these different ladies. I was a little disappointed to realize, though, that we're not going to get to find out how the stories end for some of these things. I want to know, like, how these certain people are, but as we've gone on, I've realized that we are just simply not going to get to find out some of those things. But I am going to actually read this. We've been reading this aloud each time because I think it is beneficial even though it's in the chapter. So on page 77, that's where I'm going to begin reading. Noon is kind of late to be starting my Saturday chores, but I am revved up and I'm ready to get it done. It has already been a wonderful morning. Picked up Miss Jean at 8:30, got her to the hair salon by 9, stopped at Mickey D's for breakfast, back to her house by 11, chatted a little more, made myself break up the gab fest, and headed to my house to do chores by noon. I don't remember how this routine got started, but I love it. Mostly, I love hearing Miss Jean's story, how she became a Christian, some of her favorite Bible studies, about being a cook and a diner. I see how that experience made her one of the best cooks in our congregation. Listening to the pride in her voice as she talks about her 2 sons and a daughter, she loves being their mother. She has gotten awfully discouraged since she had to stop driving. She told me this morning with a gleam in her eye that she sometimes drives the 5 or 6 blocks to the dollar store instead of asking for help. Miss Jean is closer to 100 than she is to 90, so she must be in the last few steps of her journey. She has been a blessing to the church all her adult life, and even now, when she can barely see and when she needs to use a walker to get around in her own house, she is still a blessing. Yes, it's noon, and there is laundry and cleaning and grocery shopping to do, but because of my time with Miss Jean, there is within my heart a melody. So we all know Miss Jeans in our life. We all know those ladies that have been such an encouragement to us to see and to know how they lived their life. I read something this morning and it was so good. It was talking about how discouraging it is to see the news today, right? There's so much going on in the world. But this person was talking to somebody who had lived through the Vietnam War and all of that turmoil, and her husband had gone and been there in that conflict, and just all these things that they had lived through. And they're like, now, isn't it so hard to be alive today? And that person said, I like to look at my own headlines. Today I woke up and I loved my husband. Yesterday, I called and talked to my daughter for an hour on the phone. Tomorrow, I get to go and see my grandson play football. And she's like, those are the headlines. So instead of paying attention, it's not that she doesn't ever look at the news, but she chooses to think the most important news are the newses that are happening in her own life. And I just made up a word, newses. The news that's happening in her own life. She chooses to think that that's the most important. And that's kind of what's happening here. I'm sure that if we were to talk to Miss Jean, she would have all sorts of heartache and trials and discouragements and challenges that she could tell you about, but it does not stop her from also talking about those things that made her life happy. And so that is a really good way to look at it. And this was written by this author. I think that sometimes she's just making up the story, but I suspect this one about Miss Jean is real. Unlike some of the introductions in the other chapters, I suspect that this one is somebody that she really does go, and or at least at the time of writing this book, really did go and really did pick up this lady. And so what a special time to be able to have with somebody that you might not have even paid attention to if you weren't thinking about it. Recognizing that need and going to meet it, but more than that, because can we recognize a need and meet it without really having a relationship at all? I mean, somebody could go and just pick her up and just take her to the salon and not really talk on the way while she gets her hair done and just, oh, okay, now you're done, and rush her right back home. They technically would have met that need, and that's how some people would approach it. But to spend that extra time to say, why don't we grab breakfast afterward? When you get back to her house, to walk back in with her for a few minutes and talk a little bit longer. That's a different sort of need that's being met. But of the two, with her getting her hair done or with that time spent talking, which one did you really make the biggest impact in Miss Jean's life? Right? I mean, the talking and the human contact was a whole lot more. I mean, the salon now, the hairdresser probably met that need too, because they tend to be really good at talking and really good at touch and helping people to feel better while they're there about themselves. Hairdressers tend to be really good at, oh, you look so pretty now, and things like that. I often think that most of the time I've ever had one, they have a special gift. They, I don't know if they teach it in their beauty school or what, but I think that they have a special gift for being able to make people feel good and to make, you just feel better when somebody has taken care and your hair doesn't have split, scraggled ends and things. You just feel like just cleaner and fresher and nicer. And then when they compliment you on their job well done, it just makes you feel good. And like I said, most of the time, hairdressers tend to chat the whole time, right? They're really good at it. And a lot of times your dental hygienists are like that. You've got these people that are in that service and they've got you captive in their chair, but they tend to be really good at chatting with you and just making you feel like you've had some human contact. And that's a really special thing. So we should be thankful for those people when we have them. And that's not to say that there couldn't be a dental hygienist that just doesn't speak to you at all. I mean, I'm sure they exist too. But for the most part, everyone I've ever had has chatted the whole time.
I had one that sung.
Oh, she said she had one that sang. So that's even more special, maybe. But so we have these people, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. But some people have more of an ability to do this than others do. They have that ability to use the job that they're getting paid for to also be an encouragement and an uplifter. Both of our boys have done speech and occupational therapy, and those people are amazing at talking the whole time and at encouraging and at positiveness. So they get the work done, but they also get to know those people that they're helping. And so, I mean, because Simon is still in therapies right now, and all of his people can tell you what his things are. And it is not easy sometimes to get Simon to talk about his things, but they know, they can tell you what his favorite things to watch are and what his favorite little things to play are, and it's because they are very careful with what they do. So we can be that same way, though. We don't have to be in some kind of a profession that kind of encourages that. We can do it ourselves, even just here in the church, and we're going to talk about that this morning some. So on page 78, it starts with the verse, having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love, love one another earnestly from a pure heart. 1 Peter 1:22. So what are we? If we are earnest in something that we do, what does that mean?
You care about it.
You care about it. It's not something that you just kind of coincidentally end up doing. You have to apply yourself to be earnest about something, and you have to focus on it, and you want to accomplish that goal. And when we do that, when we love each other like that from a pure heart, then that is a totally different kind of love than what a lot of people in the world think of when they think of love. A lot of people have a lot of misconception really about love, but when we love in that way, with that sincere, genuine, able to be, remember a couple chapters back we talked about, are we reliable, are we dependable in our reactions, are we consistent and constant in the way that we treat other people? Do they know that we're not going to run around and gossip with something that they've told us? Can they trust us? We talked about all of that. And that's what sincere is, right? It's going to be real. It's going to be genuine. It's going to be without, a couple chapters back too, we talked about without strings attached. We're not pulling on it saying, well, I did this for you. Why aren't you doing this for me? It's not that kind of love. And so if we could all have that kind of love that the Bible says that we're supposed to have, and especially for those of the household of faith, right? We're told that in Galatians, then we are going to look like a family full of love in the church. So she says here, Christ was God and human at the same time. He had power, and not just any power, he had the power of God. He could create, he could destroy, but here is a thing. When he was a child, he used his power to submit to his parents. Throughout his life, he used his power to listen to others, to the people that he met, that he saw, to actually hear what they were saying and what they weren't saying sometimes, to care for others, to encourage others. He used it to heal the sick. He used it to encourage people that were stuck in patterns of shame and disgrace. Think about that woman at the well. Think about some other people that he also met. He used his power to glorify God by helping others. And we can glorify God by helping others too. And Christ still has a servant's heart. She reminds us here, he lives to make intercessions for Christians. Hebrews 7:25. He exists to help us, Christians. I mean, that's an amazing thought, right? I don't know that we stop to think about his intercession for us as much as we ought to. Jesus did not serve others to get them to do what he wanted. He did not try to do that. He served because it's his nature to serve. And if I want to be Christ-like, then it has to be my nature to serve also. So she goes on and she says several things. At the top of page 79, Jesus spent long hours showing others how valuable they are. How valuable they are. How valuable is a person? Right? We're priceless, right? Because we're each a soul. Every soul is valuable to God.
Everybody now thinks valuable means money.
That's right. She was saying, everybody thinks valuable now means money, and that's not. But we are talking about things that are way more valuable than money. As long as somebody has got breath in them still, and they are alive, they are a soul, and it doesn't matter about what kind of life they've been leading, because this book, the Bible, tells me that they can repent and turn completely around from that life and change and literally be a new creature. So we know that value, that pricelessness, that absolute worth, I don't have to do anything other than to be that valuable to God, because of just being a soul that's alive. And if I am a Christian that has made that decision to repent and confess and be baptized, and I'm living faithfully, how valuable am I then? I mean, that's huge value. We live in a world where people struggle constantly with their self-worth and with wondering, how do I measure that? Do I need somebody else to value me before I can feel valuable? We talk about it. I was reading an article the other day about empty nest, right? When the children leave the home, and sometimes that causes real self-worth issues, especially in the mother, but it can for both parents. And it was saying that then that's not really the right way to approach that. Ideally, you would be happy that you've done your job so well that they've independently gone out and that they're living their lives. And that's how we live, though. Some people are like, I have no value now because this thing I've always done. Or what about sometimes when people retire, they have that. They don't have this job, this thing that they were doing for 40 years or however many years that they did it, and they don't feel as valuable. They don't feel like they're making the same contribution. And so people struggle with that, but we don't need to if we're Christians. We don't have to have that struggle. He spent long hours caring for the sick, caring for the needy. So caring for other people isn't easy, right? It costs us. It costs us our time. It costs us our, sometimes our peace and our well-being, because we have a lot of anxiety that goes along with being a caregiver. And it can cost us money. It can cost us other things. We have to sometimes give one thing up in order to do the other thing. So there's a big cost involved in caring for others, and especially depending on what kind of caring you're doing. When we're caring for aging parents, when we're caring for special needs children, when we're caring for maybe if somebody has a spouse that's had a stroke or some other kind of thing where they are limited in their health abilities later. We have all these needs that people have, and so much of the time people are struggling through those needs without very much help. And we can care for those people. Maybe it is somebody else's job to be the primary caregiver for that person, but maybe you can help them to take care of themselves by being, if nothing else, a good listener and just being a support, just making sure that every week you ask how things are going. And then it says that Jesus spent long hours speaking words that gave hope. Do we give hope to other people? We talked about a few weeks back, we talked about the word encourage, literally to put courage into someone. That is what encourage means. Are we giving people words of hope and courage and strength when I speak? Am I doing those things? And if I'm not doing those things, can I figure out a way to use my words a little bit differently? He shed light everywhere that he was. And so that's what it means. When we talk about being Christ-like, then we want to be doing these things. And of course, we're not going to do it as perfectly as Christ did, because we are not perfect people. But if I'm striving, if that's where I set my standard, and I'm trying to meet it, then even if the standard is up here and I'm only reaching to right here, I'm still doing something. I'm still striving to be Christ-like. So our word for this chapter is sincere. We talked about that verse, 1 Peter 1:22. I'm going to read it again. Having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love, love one another earnestly from a pure heart. So I loved what she said here about sincere. I love words. I know Lori's not here this morning, but I know she loves words like I do. And so if she's watching online, I know that she appreciated this paragraph too. So the word sincere, she said she heard this in a sermon. The word sincere is from the Latin sin, which means without, and cera, which means wax. And so the speaker who did that sermon was explaining, it's a pottery term. When a potter would slip up and the clay pot would crack, then they would use wax to seal the crack. So it's decorative, right? You can use it. It can store things decoratively, but only for decoration. Because if they actually tried to use it, if they took that pot, that jar down to the well, then the sun could melt that wax, and then the pot would fall apart. And so the shoppers would have to ask, is this pot sincere? Is it unbroken? And now she said that there is no confirmation for this story. If you're searching the etymology, you're not going to be able to find for sure if that's true. But I'll tell you what, I sure did like it either way. Whether it actually happened or didn't, I think that's a really good way to define sincere. So we have that idea. If I'm not sincere, then maybe things look right? Maybe I look like I am being a kind and generous person. But if there isn't sincerity behind it, then that all falls apart when you start to look closer at it. If I'm not actually giving that kind of love, then it's not going to be reliable. It's not going to be dependable. It's not going to be something where I'm actually helping somebody else. How many times do we have people in the world that look like they're doing really good things? And how many people sometimes do that for their own benefit? We know sometimes you see, business owners, they might do Toys for Tots or something so that it makes their business look good. But then maybe that box gets filled and maybe they don't even take them and actually give them to the children that are in need. Things like that happen in the world because people sometimes do things so that they can look good while they're doing it, but they're not actually doing good. So are my efforts actually sincere? Am I actually trying to show my love in real tangible ways? So on page 80, she says God could push and crush and coerce you to be connected to him. He could make us, but he doesn't, because that isn't what he wants. When we long to be connected to someone, it's the heart that's connected. And so he wants us to want to be connected to him. We have to make that choice. And it's the same with other people. If you want a marriage with connection, then you have to long for that connection. You have to work and actually do something to make it happen. If you want friendships with that kind of connection that aren't just kind of superficial and shallow and not deep, then you actually have to do something for that to happen. And so she has some options here about what to do if we want to make those kind of real, sincere connections. And so here are the options. I know some people who are tuning in online do not have the book, so I'm actually going to share all 5 options that she has. The first one is greet and welcome a visitor. Invite her to sit with you and your family and friends. Make a note of her name and be sure to use her name while you're talking to her. When I went away to school to MTSU in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I went and visited a congregation my very first Sunday. We weren't allowed to move in on campus until the Friday. So I had only been there just like less than 48 hours. And this congregation was located right by campus. And I didn't know any others. And this was in the late 90s. So it was not as easy to research things online and things as it is now. So I was like, I'm just going to go to this one because I knew it was right there. Well, when I walked in, this lady just kind of grabbed me up and said, come and sit with me. Not only did I sit with her, but she took me to lunch that day because she recognized a brand new student. She knew she didn't know me. She found out within the first 5 minutes that I had just moved from Virginia to Middle Tennessee and that I was, 6.5 hours away from my family. And so she did that, and she was really sweet. I did not end up worshiping there. I ended up with another congregation. But I never forgot that lady, and I would occasionally even see her because she lived right there near campus. And so I would occasionally see her because she'd come over to campus sometimes to walk in things. And so even though I didn't worship there, we maintained that relationship. She would ask how classes were going and things. But I just was not expecting that. I figured I was going to go in and kind of slink to the back view and just be there and just leave. And I did not think I was going to walk in the door and instantly being captured by this lady who did give me a hug, which I was very uncomfortable with because I did not know her. But her enthusiasm was contagious. And so I did talk to her during lunch. I mean, she found out all kinds of things about me. And like I said, looking back, I have a great fondness for that. And then another congregation that kind of had a similar thing, Lydia and our cousins and I all went on a trip to Charlotte. And so we were worshiping there while we were on our weekend away from our husbands. And there were ladies, and they just snatched us up to sit with them. And yet again, they had found out our husbands' names and what we all did and all these things. And it just made the trip so nice. It was just a special, special time of worship because it was already special with sisters and cousins all together. And it was just even better because of that experience. And so it matters. When we treat our visitors warmly, it matters. And at Collinsville, we do such a good job of people saying hello and speaking and greeting our visitors. Go ahead, Dixie.
We went to a church because we was visiting. I don't know how many churches we went to. Went to this one, and we started to sit down and this is saved.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, and see that has the opposite effect. That does not make us feel good. She was saying they went and visited a congregation once and somebody said, no, this seat is saved, you can't sit here. I cannot imagine telling a visitor that. I mean, I would struggle and move all of our stuff and all of my kids before I ever said that. But that is how some people act, and
It wasn't Church of Christ.
It's not good. Well, I mean, these things happen everywhere, and we have to be careful because if a visitor does not feel warmly greeted and welcomed, are they going to come back for a second visit? No. Why would they? And so we have to be sure that we're welcoming them. And we say it. We hear our whoever does the announcements will often say, you're our honored guest. Are they honored? Did we make them feel like honored guests? What did happen for honored guests in the previous times? They were given the choicest of seats. They were greeted. Everybody went out of their way to thank them for being there and to treat them like they were special. So if people are our honored guests, then we have to say more than just that one sentence during the announcements.
You hear about another one? We went, and there was visitors from out of town, somebody special. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting in the back. We were sitting in the little front, and this woman came out with her hand, and I reached, oh, they're back there. And she didn't shake.
Oh, no. And she was saying with that one, there were special people visiting, and then they were also visiting, and the lady had come around to greet them, but once she realized they weren't the special visitors, she just didn't greet them, wouldn't shake their hands, and just went right on. That's horrible. So we can make sure that we do that, even if you're not comfortable inviting them to sit with you, which I think that's a wonderful thing to do if you're able to do that. But even if not, everybody can smile. Everybody can say hello. So hopefully when people visit, they do feel like they were welcome while they were here and not like they were a burden and like they shouldn't have been here. The second suggestion she has is sit in a new place each week for Bible study and worship. Make an effort to get better acquainted with someone you may have worshiped with for years, but that you don't know very well. There are a lot of reasons that people sit where they sit. Not everybody can move around in the pews like that. We have some people that sit towards the front because they don't hear well and they need to be towards the front, or maybe they don't see well and they like to be able to see the screen. We have, people, we tend to sit a little bit more towards the back because where we have a 2-year-old, it makes it easier for me to get out without disrupting the entire service. So there are reasons that maybe you wouldn't want to shift around, but I really thought that was a really neat idea. And we did see people at Westside that did this. If they didn't have children, maybe it was just a couple, they would rotate where they sat, and it was so nice. We had one elder that did that. He and his wife moved all around. They would sit at the front left and the back right and the front right and the back left, and they would just talk to whoever they were with. And they had a lot of family in the congregation, so it would have been really easy for them to just sit with their family every week. And they did that some too. They would enjoy, because they had great grandkids in the congregation at that time, and they would sit with them some too. But they would also sit, and it was always so nice. And they usually would do it for several weeks, not just 1 week in a row. They might sit there for a month and talk to the people around them, so that they, especially if some new people came in, if like a new family came and placed membership, they would make sure that they sat somewhere near that family for like a month so they could get to know them in between services. And that was just such a nice thing to see. And he was such a special man. He knew all of the children knew him and loved him. And he would go to yard sales and he would get little things, and he would know what different people liked. So if there was a young girl in the congregation that liked to read, he would just come and have a book. He would have found Treasure Island or something at a yard sale, and he'd give her that. And little boys, he would give them little race cars and things, little Hot Wheels. And he just did that, just tried to get to know people and tried to do that. And so, again, you might not can sit in a different place. I'm certainly not. You're not going to see me doing that challenge, because we're going to stay right there where we've got a family close by on the pew and where I can get out easily. But it is a nice idea if somebody can, if you have the ability to. Yes.
If it's a big congregation, but I think we basically know everybody.
I figure that we can always know everybody a little bit more.
Well, I get you.
Yeah, sometimes I don't feel like, even now after being here for several years, because I'll think to myself, I have no idea what that person once did, and I know they worked for like 45 years at their job, and I could not, if somebody was like, you must be able to tell me, I could not do it. And so do I know? I mean, I could definitely know more, right? And I think sometimes it's like that. We could always know just a little bit more, even if we're close with somebody. And so it's a goal. It's a good goal to try to know these things. And it's hard because sometimes those things aren't really things like, you're not just going to walk up and be like, what did you used to do before you retired? It's not really like an appropriate thing. That's more going to come out when you're talking in the context of something else anyway. But it is true, and I think especially sometimes I think we can have, teenagers and college-age students in our congregation, and maybe we don't know that much about them. And so we can always work on it just a little bit more and see if we can know just a little bit more about somebody. The third option that she gives us is to find a member of the congregation who does not attend fellowship events very often. You might even ask the elders, is there somebody that y'all would like to see be able to come to some things? And then ask that person to sit with you and your family. Offer to save a place at your table. Tell them that you want to get better acquainted with them. And you just never know how that could happen. How you might actually get somebody to stay. And not just fellowship events, but sometimes people just don't know. I know when I was at Westside, I was asked one year to try to just talk to different ladies about attending the Ladies' Day. And I was talking to one lady, and she said, well, I thought that was just for the married women. I didn't know it was for single women too. And she just genuinely did not know. And no one had ever told her that it was for all the women, all the girls, all the teenage girls, and all the women, just whomever would like to come and be encouraged. And so she came that year, and she faithfully attends every single year now, but she just had no idea. She really thought that all the topics were for ladies that were married. And so we just don't know sometimes when we invite somebody. It's the same. We had a couple years ago before COVID, we had a VBS here. It was for the entire congregation. It wasn't for the children. And Jonathan had lessons prepared for the adults. And I think that a lot of people just didn't quite know. We had tried to make it kind of clear on the flyers or whatever, but it was something different, a different way of doing it, and people might not have realized. And so we can sometimes assume that people know, and they don't necessarily know. I know that sometimes you might have a family that doesn't attend for a reason. Maybe they don't come because they have a child that has food allergies. When we worshiped at Lake Drive, there was a little girl who had severe food allergies, and she was allergic to about 45 different foods, and a whole lot of them would send her into anaphylactic shock. They didn't attend because they weren't sure that they could keep her safe. Well, once they realized that, because at Lake Drive they don't have a fellowship hall, and so you eat in different classrooms, and once they realized that people were glad to let they had multiple children, let them eat in a classroom with nobody else taking their food in there, because she was real little at that time and they didn't want her accidentally getting something, then they were happy to attend. And so her daddy would run down and get what she was able to eat, or they would bring a cooler with something she was able to eat, and they would know that she could be safe in there with her brother and sisters, and that they could still enjoy the meal. And so just sometimes you just don't know what's keeping somebody away from it. And if you ask them, and sometimes it is just that maybe they just don't feel, maybe they're anxious about being in a big crowd of people down in the fellowship hall, or maybe they are just not sure that they would be able to have somebody to sit with. They don't want to feel awkward. They don't want to feel, if they're a person that doesn't have a spouse or children, they don't want to just plunk themselves down at a table. And if you've extended that invitation to them, why don't you sit with me? It might make all the difference in the world to them being able to feel like they can stay. So that is another really good idea. And if we look around in our minds, now I know with COVID, we've not had very many fellowship things. It might be kind of hard to think who would come and who would stay and things.
We need to make sure too that we let them know it's okay they didn't bring anything.
Mm-hmm. And that is
there's always plenty.
That's right. That's an announcement that ideally would be made every time that we were having a meal, that whoever was taking care of the announcements or the closing prayer one could say, even if you didn't bring anything, go ahead and stay, because there is always plenty. And so we just have to think about these things a little bit. And if we think about them, then we might find that because we should want to stay. This is our church family. We should want to go down and be a part of it. And now, is everybody going to be able to make every fellowship thing all the time? Of course not. There are other obligations that do come up, especially if the event might be like on a Saturday. There are things in the calendar and things. I know we have a Christmas gathering with my grandparents who are aging, and we want to make sure we're there, and we have family coming from out of town, so we're actually going to miss the December 18th one here. And but I'm about to see a cousin that I haven't seen in 2 years, and his little boy, and I just don't want to miss that. And they are from Richmond, so they're coming and leaving in the same day, so there's no other opportunity to see them. And so we just already had that on our calendar for months and months and months when we found out this other date. And so you can't make everything. Sometimes you might find that out. You might ask somebody, and they might tell you, I can't stay because of this, and they might have a really valid, good reason. But we should mostly want to be able to be at our fellowship. Yes, Dixie.
Fellowship. Mm-hmm. Is it fellowship if you sit with your family the whole time? I thought fellowship, you sit with different people, not your family, and that's something that's bothered Gilmore.
Well, we sit with our family because our kids need a lot of support and help while they're eating and things.
That's different.
But then we also like to try to move around the room and speak to people and things and try to talk, especially when we're like in the food line and things. I know I used to have, I used to joke with Tom and Susan when they were here because Tom always had something on that food table, and I always really enjoyed that, seeing what he had brought and what he might have made that time. And so even though we do sit with our family, we do try to be, you know, present with all of our other family too, with our church family.
Most of us don't have children though.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a good idea. And one thing that some congregations do that kind of helps with that is they have the tables like this. So then you kind of don't have a choice but to sit with a lot of people. Where we have the round tables here, it does make it a little bit easy to kind of get into your little niche and sit with the same people each time. But you can always change that up too, because chances are good when you come down, if you said, hey, could I sit right here? Not a lot of people are going to tell you, no, this seat is saved. And so you might can, you know, end up sitting with people that you haven't sat with before. That's a thing. Every one of these suggestions that I thought of, I also thought it's also kind of on us to make sure that we do the thing too. You know, it is good to greet the visitors, but it's also good if the visitor comes in with a smile and with a pleasant disposition too, right? It's not entirely just on the congregation. Their experience also relies on them and what their attitude is too. So it does not excuse us from, I mean, if somebody did come in and they just had a sour look on their face, it does not excuse us from not saying hello and things, but certainly they're not going to rate that experience as very positive, even if every single person had said hello to them, if they've come in with that kind of attitude. So if you have that kind of disposition, I mean, right, that's how we kind of view life.
My countenance is usually hateful looking. It is, and mad
I don't think
looking.
you have a hateful countenance.
And Tom one time came up to me and said, why don't you smile more? Of course I said, well, I laugh at you all the time.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah.
And people used to say at school, I thought you were stuck up, and then they got to know me, and we...
Me too,
Yeah.
because I was an introvert.
Yeah.
No, I'm not an extrovert.
Well, she was saying that sometimes, you know, people might not smile as their countenance. Maybe their resting face is just kind of a straight face. And so and sometimes people will say, oh, that person is so stuck up, or they'll think this or that about them, and that's not true. You have to get to know somebody. So that is something important to keep in mind too. But we do all know those people that are going to complain about everything. And if you're going to have that kind of disposition, then it wouldn't matter what a fabulous experience you had, they're still gonna rate it as this was so awful. And so we have to be careful that we're not doing that we're not projecting our feelings on that aren't actually what has happened. Because I do know, I've seen people be greeted and treated really warmly and friendly, and then they turn around, oh, and hardly nobody speak to me. And it's like, well, I mean, not every single person is going to make it around to you. But if you had half the congregation be so friendly and warm to you, I mean, that's good. That's a good start. And we have to kind of be grateful for who did, instead of for just being complaining about who didn't. And it's the same like with the fellowship meal. Maybe instead of thinking like they sit with their family every single time, maybe think, well, maybe they have not gotten to see their family very much. I mean, sometimes if you have adult children in the congregation, maybe you hadn't seen them in weeks, and so it's enjoyable to be able to sit for a little while with your family. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as, I mean, it would be bad if you were like only just at your table and didn't speak to another soul. But I think as long as you were sitting with your family, but then still kind of, you know, spoke to other people, then you're still doing good. So number 4, she said, if you rarely or never attend fellowship gatherings yourself because you have anxiety or insecurities, then find someone to try to join up with before the event. You might even ride together that day so that you have each other, as a support. And this is something that a lot of times you'll see if you worship in a larger place, maybe where they have like a college or I think young professionals they call it. They will do that with each other. They'll think, I don't know about attending this gospel meeting, but then they'll get together and they'll go eat before and then they'll come to it. And it just kind of makes it a little bit easier to do. They don't feel like they're having to show up all by themselves. Were you about to say something? Oh, okay. I thought I saw you raise your hand again. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't ignoring you. And so then number 5, pray for someone who has been missing in attendance. And if you've got love for that person, then call and say that they're missed. You don't have to do a sermon. You don't have to even tell them about forsaking the assembly or anything. Just say, we have sure missed you. We miss seeing you on Sunday mornings. We miss you at worship. We miss you at Bible class. Do we have people that sometimes are there for worship, but they've not come for Bible class? You can get so much more when you've come and you've studied together as a family. Again, as a family, that's what we are here.
But like here, when we most of the time sit in the same place, if that place is empty, like Eddie's not there, it's just not right.
It's not right. We miss people.
Yes, we do.
We should say that we miss them. We should make sure that they know. And even because I'm not good with phone calls, because I've got a lot, and I'm not good at getting on the phone. And I can't even get on the phone with my own family, like my dad. Much less, like, it's hard for me to try to make that call. Much less to try to call every single week for the congregation.
She's a good one. I enjoy talking to her.
Yes, we have that. Are great at that. But what you can be good at is trying to encourage that person. I know that I haven't called Eddie, but when I know Jonathan is going to call, I'll say, don't forget to tell him that, that I said hello and that I'm missing him too. I can tell Liz.
That's what I do.
can say, we miss him so much, and that still matters. That still counts. And so even if it's not your strong point to be the one that gets on the phone or to be the one that's sending the cards in the mail, you can still use your voice and say it in person. And if you're saying it to their spouse, that's still an encouragement. I know that she still goes home and says, all these people today missed you so much. And so that still does count. And so if we think to ourselves that we can't do something perfectly, we can still do it well. Sometimes we let good be or perfect be the enemy of doing something good. We might think, well, I just won't do it at all. Well, no, we can still try to do these good things, even if we can't do the thing that might even be a little bit better. And so we have to think about those options. I think all 5 of them, and she kind of has them. Some of them are a little harder than others. Some of them are a little bit easier than others. But we can try to do these things. And so she says, before you do anything, to read these options again, to think about them, to try to circle your choice. Which one do I really want to do? And I would say to match your choice to your personality. If you are an introverted person, then maybe making that call to say that you miss someone isn't really going to be your best fit, especially for the very first activity she asks you to do. Maybe then you want to do one of these other ones, like greeting and welcoming the visitor. Maybe that one's a little bit easier for you. If you are a super extroverted person, though, maybe one of these other ones is a good one for you. I mean, I believe that an extrovert or an introvert could do all 5 of these things. You don't have to be one or the other. They're doable for each person. But it might be that one is a little bit more doable. Maybe whatever your season in life isn't going to let you do one of the ones, but you can do the other one. Sometimes there are different reasons. There might be somebody that used to attend fellowship all the time, and then maybe they were widowed and they don't like to come anymore without their spouse. So maybe if they knew that somebody was going to be waiting for them and going to sit down right with them, maybe that would make them more inclined to come. There's just a lot of things, and we don't know if we don't ask. If we don't try to speak to the person, then we can't understand what somebody's logic and reasoning are about things. And so she says, ask yourself, why did I select that option? Is it because there was a certain person that you were thinking about a whole lot that's on your mind? Do you choose that option because of that person, you were already thinking about them and you want to do something? And so she says, here are some reasons. I am allowing this assignment to motivate me to remove a barrier that's needed to come down for a long time. We talked about those walls we build. We build walls with lots of mortar, with really, really strong bricks, really high. And then sometimes we have to take those down brick by brick, and it's not going to happen overnight. You're not just going to usually demolish the whole wall at once, but maybe you just little by little do it. She said, could your appropriate answer about your choice be, I have decided this is the day to stop passing people with just a nod and a hello. And one thing that's always nice to think about, where we have people on the prayer list, a lot of times you have a perfect opening for a conversation right there. If you know that person's mother is on the prayer list because they've been struggling with their health, and you think, I don't know what in the world to talk to this person about. How is your mother doing? I've been praying for her because she's on our list. That one sentence, and they might answer with just, oh, fine right now. They might not give you very much, but they might actually have a need to talk. Maybe nobody else has really asked about it. And so you might be able to be filling a need to be a good listener. And so we can think about things like that. And then she said that one of the answers is, I'm comfortable doing any of these things. I can do it all. All 5 options are good for me. I don't know if everybody could answer that way, but some ladies might can. And then she said, of course, you could make a choice and your answer could be other. It could be something other than those things listed above. But then she said, think about why you didn't select the other options. Is it because it's too hard, or it's too painful? It's going to cost you a lot to be able to do that thing. So that is all stuff to think about. And really, when we're doing anything in life, right, that's the kind of way that we approach things. When you're if you work somewhere and you're asked to take on a new kind of a job that you didn't do before, right? Your manager did not just randomly pick you as the person to do it, not usually. They've usually selected you because of your other job you were already doing. They realize that you have the ability, the capability to do that thing that they've asked you to do. Any kind of thoughtful manager, that's how they're going to ask people. That's how they're going to delegate, right? Because you're not going to get a job well done if you just randomly throw a dart at a board and choose somebody's name to do it. And so it's the same way when we're making these kind of choices. We have to be that person. We have to delegate for ourselves. What are we going to ask ourselves to do? How are we going to approach it? Why did we ask ourselves to do it? And so I really like the way that she broke this down for everybody to think really hard about the choices that they're making and why they did it the way they did, or why they avoided it. Because we human beings are avoiders, right? If we can avoid things that are painful and hard, we're going to do it. And sometimes that's a good thing, right? Sometimes avoiding pain is going to help to keep people safe, because they're not going to do foolish things. They're going to not climb the ladder in slippery socks. They're going to put shoes on their feet first because they don't want to have a fall off of a ladder, and that's good. So sometimes avoiding pain, avoiding those kinds of hardships is a great thing. It's a self-preserver. It keeps us well and healthy. But sometimes our avoidance is not a good thing. We can think about people who need to do something, should do something, and they don't do it because they're avoiding it. And that's not good. So she says that once you complete the task, you're not done. Even after you've done all the work, there is still more work to do. You want to think about, how did you feel as you prepared to do the assignment? Were you afraid of rejection? Were you afraid that you wouldn't have the patience to do it? Were you confident? Did you think, I'm going to succeed at this as soon as I try it? Were you eager to do it? I mean, how did you feel? And why did you feel that way? Sorry. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I knew my alarm was about to go off, so I grabbed it and cut it off. But we can also think, how did you feel with that other person? Sometimes when you choose one of these assignments, maybe that person is difficult. Maybe they're not easy to get along with. Maybe they are a complainer and you just know they're going to spend the whole time talking to you about other people. But did you still try? Did we just give up on those people? Did we just say, well, that one doesn't matter. We don't need her at fellowship things. Or do we still have to try with that person? So sometimes you might feel intolerant, impatient. Sometimes you might feel really strong and like you did a really good thing. So there are all different things that people can feel when they're doing those things. Did you listen to the person? Are we active listeners? What do we have to do to listen to somebody actively? We have to hear them, first of all. But if we hear, are we really listening?
You have to tune self out.
You have to tune self out.
Exactly.
You have to tune self out. You have to tune other distractions out, right, to be a good listener. I know today we talk about this, but we've got lots of people that listen this way, right? Are you listening then to anything that the other person says? What about our nonverbal speech? How much of speech is verbal and how much of what we say is nonverbal? There's a lot of nonverbal communication that happens. Am I listening to that too? Am I paying attention to people's eyes, to people's posture, to people's stances and how they're being? Or am I only listening to the words they say? Because some of the people that need people to listen the most aren't saying anything worth hearing sometimes with their mouths. It's the other listening that we have to do. Oh no, go ahead.
Sometimes people are thinking about, now, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Don't even.
Yes. And I'm bad about that. I have to train myself not to be thinking about what I'm going to say, because as an introvert, it's hard. Like, conversations can be hard for me. They can be kind of draining sometimes. And I have to be thinking like I'm listening to them, because I feel sometimes, especially if I don't know a person very well, I feel awkward sometimes in conversations. And so I have to think a little bit more to make sure that I'm giving the responses at the right times. So especially when, like I said, when it's a brand new relationship and I'm trying to get to know somebody, it can be a little bit hard because I feel sometimes like there are pauses that last and things. But I don't want to be thinking like that. So instead of thinking like that, I try not to. So we have to try to listen, though, actively, and we have to try to actually hear what the person is saying and what the person is not saying. And so that's a thing. The next one says, and we're on page 82 for people who are following along, describe what you learned about the recipient. How did you learn about their perspective? What did you learn about who she is and what she values? Did we learn anything about the other person? We talked at the very beginning of this chapter with Miss Jean. She could easily have picked her up, barely spoken to her, been friendly even. Hey, how are you? Driven her there, let her go in by herself, just got her back in the car and took her right straight home. And she would have met the need that Miss Jean, who doesn't have a driver's license anymore, had. She would have met that need, but she would have missed all that beauty of the relationship, all of that talking and chatting over the biscuit and coffee, and then all of the going back and having to tear yourself away. Do we love when we are with somebody where communication is easy? Is it hard to say goodbye? It's hard to leave when it's that person that you actually love to spend time with and talk to. And it's really neat to think that you could be that person. You could be the one where people are like, oh man, I just don't have any choice. I've got to leave because I've got other things to do. And so we can be that for somebody else. But we're certainly not going to if we don't know that other person, who they are and what their perspective is and what they value. And we live in a world where sometimes if people don't think just like me and act just like me, then maybe I don't have much use for them, right? That's how we can see. You just turn on the news for 5 minutes and you'll see that that's how a lot of people look at things. And I don't think that that is the same thing as valuing people at all, right? It doesn't look like that when we're truly trying to value other people. What did you do to show that person that you valued them? I mean, when we're doing these things, if we show them what they mean to us, what does that look like? How do we show that somebody has value and meaning to us? We often hear about funerals where people are saying, I wish I had said, I wish I had told her while she was alive. If only she knew what she meant to me, right? People do that. A lot of people leave graveside services very regretful, not just because the person has died, but because something that needed to be said never was. And so we have to not wait until it's too late to show people the value that they have to us. We know about a chapter ago, I think, maybe 2 chapters ago, she had that example of somebody had invited her to a picnic. And she's like, no, I can't come that day, because she didn't want to feel like she was on their date with them. And then realized that they were actually inviting her to their wedding. And she did not know that invitation to the picnic, and she was the only person that worked with them that they had invited. And their feelings were very hurt because she didn't come. And she's like, oh, if they had just told me this is my wedding, I want you to come. But they hadn't done that because they didn't want everybody at work to feel slighted because they weren't invited. So they thought if they had done the invite as a picnic, but she had no idea that she meant so much to that person that they would want them at their wedding. And so how many hurt feelings, how many communication issues could be solved if we said how we felt? If somebody hurt our feelings and we actually said out loud, that really kind of hurt my feelings, then you can talk about it and clear the air and make things better. You can do the repairs. Whereas if we just kind of silently hurt, then we end up with a bigger damage to the relationship. That happens with marriages a lot, right? People have these little resentments and these little things, and they don't talk about them. And then the next thing you know, then people are going to get divorced. And it is sometimes true that if there had been communication that was better, then that would have helped. It happens in parent-child relationships. It happens in sibling relationships, right? There are literally siblings that haven't spoken a word to each other in 15 or 20 years. And it's all over some misunderstanding that could have been totally cleared up by just saying the thing that was the offense and talking through it instead of pretending like it didn't exist. So we did a lot in the chapter today. We're going to go ahead and close out now, but thank you everybody. Just remember, no class next week, not online, not in person, and everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Over all the earth, you reign on high. Every mountain stream, every sunset sky. But my one request, Lord, my only aim, is that you'd reign in me again. Lord, reign in me, reign in your power over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? Over every thought, over every word, may my life reflect the beauty of my Lord. 'Cause you mean more to me than any earthly thing. So won't you reign in me again? Lord, reign in me, reign in your power over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? Lord, reign in me, reign in your power over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? You are the Lord.